So, welcome to the second Behat Meetup this year. Awesomely, we have another great topic in a row. Today we will talk about BDD in open source and Behat in open source on the example of Sylius project. And just for you to know, we will soon run out really great topics. So if you have ideas or you want to propose some topic for you to talk, please talk with me or Kuba and we can arrange something for the next meetup. So now, with your applause, let me introduce Paweł.
Okay, so thank you for introduction. I'll do my best to speak as loudly as possible, but I'm after 3 days of full-time speaking, so it's a bit hard. So first of all, thank you, Pete, for helping me getting here. That's the guy. Thank you. If you'll be happy with this talk. So this won't be about how to write features or how to write scenarios, etc. I will mostly want to show you a different perspective of how BDD with Behat can be used, because probably most of you work on client projects, so in open source it looks a bit different. So I'll probably compare a commercial project where you have clients, etc. and what's the final effect of adopting a BDD tool like Behat for open source project. And there will be a moment about version 3 of Behat because we adopted it pretty quickly. So yeah, Konstantin already introduced me, but my name is Paweł Jędrzejewski, and it will be fine if you remember just the name, because I don't think it's possible to pronounce it easily. So yeah, I started this Sylius project, and maybe that's the wrong background. Like it should be my city here. no idea what happened. Yeah, I don't live in Behat scenarios. Maybe a bit when I work a lot, but yeah, I came here from Łódź, which is in the center of Poland. It's a beautiful city. If anyone has a chance to visit it, be my guest, just not all at once. So yeah, that's how Łódź looks. So, what is Sylius? Right now, Sylius can be called an e-commerce framework for PHP, and not only for PHP, because it's first of all it's a set of PHP e-commerce components in the same way as it is with Symfony, where it has the components to solve the most common problems that a web developer may have. So what Sylius is trying to do is to create a set of standalone and decoupled components which support creating e-commerce applications with PHP and any framework. It is also a set of standalone bundles for Symfony. So there is a cart bundle, order bundle, and many other components which you can use in any Symfony app. Let's say you have a bookstore which has a collection of books and you'd like to introduce a shopping feature. So you could use some of the bundles instead of rewriting it from scratch. And Sylius is also a full stack Symfony framework application. So if you are in a need for a very generic e-commerce platform with all the features that you would expect from an e-commerce application to have, you can use the whole application. So a bit of history, because it didn't start like this. To give you a perspective of how we evolved, because BDD had played a huge role in this evolution. So I was in a need for 2 web shop applications which had very, very similar requirements, and it was around the time when Symfony Reloaded appeared. That it wasn't even alpha, I think. It was like just a new version of Symfony. So I was very excited with the framework, and I wanted to build my next project using this particular framework, and it would be silly to recreate everything. So I wanted to have some kind of modules. And Symfony comes with the bundle system, so it was a perfect fit. So I created a few bundles. Even it wasn't even Sylius name. It was completely something different. I don't even remember. So at some point, when using the bundles, we wanted to have some playground to integrate them, to see how the cart works with the products, or to see how order works with the products. So we created a sandbox application, which was just a standard Symfony application integrated with the bundles. And at some point, we realized that, hey, integrating bundle by bundle is cool, but we want to like have a base to start a project. So, but the sandbox was without any kind of tests, even unit tests. So we decided to rewrite it using Behat. At some point, I think a few months into the rewrite, we switched from PHP unit to PHP Spec. So it's also part of Sylius. And then, I think that's the final step of evolution, we extracted these PHP commerce components I talked about. So yeah, that's the difference between components and the bundles. The bundles are integration layers for the components for Symfony, provide forms between integrations, anything Symfony specific. The components are just raw PHP libraries, which can save you time if you start with it. The app basically consists of two main bundles, which integrate the other bundles into a fully functional web shop. And it's built on Symfony standard edition, so it should be familiar for any Symfony developer. Yes, so you may wonder why I decided to go with Behat. So it's all his fault because I was lucky enough to work at the same company as Konstantin, and while we didn't have a chance to work on the same project, I kinda worked on mine and looked at his on GitHub, and he started doing some pretty crazy things with Behat and PHP Spec on one project. And at some point, I realized that I understand better the business of his project than my current one, because my current one was like waterfall and far from perfect. So I was struggling to understand the business behind my project, while his was pretty clear to me what's going on. So I wanted to do the same with Sylius, obviously. So for Behat it was communication, and also for the reason behind adoption of PHP Spec is the code quality. I wanted to make some difference for the developers, because of course there's a long way for us to make a difference for end users, but with PHP Spec we kinda we got a pretty decent quality. The not very good parts are the context, the Behat context, because yeah, it's sometimes problematic to decouple them properly. But yeah, we achieved pretty nice quality of the code. So it might seem crazy to question BDD on a Behat meetup, but I'll try. So I will ask if it works for an open source project, because probably most of you believe or know from experience that it works for commercial projects. So BDD needs a clear, you need to know who are the stakeholders. You probably have some agile methodologies for the management of the project. So it's kind of streamlined with how BDD with Behat is supposed to work. While in open source, there is no customer. Nobody is paying us for staying late up at night to work on it, and the process is far from agile, because even if we define some sprints and try to organize community into some more structured initiatives where we work on documentation, these are not really sprints, because the guy behind the pricing component goes for holidays. So here's your sprint, right? Everyone has its own life, his own life. So the differences. In an open source project, in case of Sylius and probably many other open source projects, it's the lead developer, the core team, the community, and the process is always, well, it's true as well for agile projects, but the process is dynamic, changes. We learn as the project grows, so it's very different from a client project where you have very clear view on the stakeholders, where you have client, product owner, the team. You have a structured way to work on the project. So for an open source project, who is the customer? It's a difficult question. There is lead developer, for example me, so I have some power to decide what goes into the code and what doesn't. There are contributors who, of course, have their input into decision making or suggestions. Developers who use Sylius or any other open source project. In that case, these are the clients. These are the people who are rewriting the software code. And the same goes with merchants and the users of the app from a business world. At current stage, they are not that involved, and it's also reflected in the language in which we write our features, which we'll see later. But these are the customers of an open source project. These are the stakeholders. So, who writes the features? And who decides what's the right thing to implement in an open source project? It's very different because from a commercial project, there is the product owner, the client. They know what kind of value they want to deliver to the end user. And in Sylius, most of the time the features are written by the core team, so the most experienced developers with the platform who know our dictionary steps, know how to structure them, what's the workflow, but they don't necessarily implement these features. They can just start initiative with feature description of an address book, which I'll show you later. But that's the people, the main group of people who write the features. There are contributors who are who know how to use Behat, so they can come and contribute a feature, starting with the proper BDD way, where they describe it first. Feature requesters. These are people who don't really code, but they need a specific feature for the platform. So they're using Sylius already, and they have some new exciting feature in mind, which they want to implement. So they come, they can write, using Gherkin, they write the feature request. Bug reporters. This is one of my favorite examples of using BD, because there is a bug and I spend like half an hour on chat trying to understand what's the bug about. The guy is trying to explain it. This doesn't work as expected. I try to get from him what's the expected way for it to work. So the simplest thing we can do is just ask him to write a feature. He probably will need some help, otherwise he will fix it himself. But yeah, bug reporting is another use case for Behat scenarios. So, what's the most important thing for an open source project? It's not the code, because no offense, but if you Drupal, the code is far from well, Drupal is a great product, but the code is far from perfect, and you have to really be a Drupal developer to understand it. And the most important thing in an open source project is the people which build the community. And in reality, the community is all about communication between all these people. So when running an open source project, you need to know which are the most desired features by the community, because yeah, we can add as many features as we want if we have time, but half of them can be not used at all. So to build a good product, a good open source product, you need people who will guide you what they need, what are their needs. They will write feature requests. So, and they need to talk to each other, because communicating ideas, problems, solutions to how to implement something, this all requires a good communication between them. They often speak different language, which sometimes can be a problem, but there is a way to make them speak one language, like one unified language which everyone around the project understands. With commercial project, this language is pretty much the business domain of your client. So you learn to speak his language, and at the same time he improves his language and understanding of his business. But in commercial projects, most of the time you communicate face to face, or at least on Skype. While in open source, it's mostly GitHub, Twitter. These are nice and fast channels of communication, but to write a Behat story through Twitter is not possible. So with an open source project, there are meetups, there are conferences where you can meet your community, you can talk to the people who help you build the platform. But in reality, it's a bit hard to communicate efficiently. There are mailing lists, like emails. It's not that easy. But with Behat, there is a way to improve the level of communication among the community members of an open source project. Because let's forget about programming at all. Let's forget about Behat. What's the easiest way to explain to someone what you mean or how a motor works? The easiest way is, in my opinion, by examples. And the cool part about Behat is that we can talk about particular feature which is missing in Sylius or is not working correctly. And when we want to get on the same level of understanding it as an open source community, we can write the examples, the Behat scenarios, the features, which are then the acceptance criteria for the ultimate goal of the project, which is always moving, of course. And they're executed and automatically verify if everything works. That's the magic. So another cool thing I noticed when working with people is that every project is different. So, and especially in e-commerce, there are the basic level of e-commerce, the common terms and the common features that e-commerce needs to have are pretty, maybe not basic, but known to everybody. But every project is different. And Sylius is used in more and more projects every month. I lost the ability to track them, which is always a nice feeling. So every project is different, and the business behind the project is also different. So it has different requirements, various solutions for the problems, like even most basic e-commerce problems like conversion rates for currencies. So we learn from every time I discover a new project using Sylius, or a community member who joins the community through GitHub, who emails or chats with me, and he is working on a project, the final output is that he is quite happy with the results of the project, even if it's pre-alpha software. But Sylius as a community and as a project grows drastically. Every new project is a great learning experience. And what we do is that people come from these various and very different projects and try to transform the business language that the clients are talking into something which fits the Sylius domain. So they get an idea for a feature or for a problem which is not solved in other platforms, etc. They come to Sylius community. They transform this problem or idea into a scenario, and we can implement it very easily. So with Sylius, I noticed that my commercial projects and the features I write for them or read, which are written by different developers, are most of the time a bit different from what we do with Sylius. And it's not really intended from my side to write Sylius features in some special language. It's just the effect of using Behat, that we develop our common understanding and a dictionary of steps. The language we speak when we talk about Sylius and how it works, how it behaves, what's behavior. So you will notice that it's in some cases it looks like classic business requirements, and it could be read out loud by a businessman. He will get the idea. But it also has this developer flavor. So we talk about configurations often, and that's good because every e-commerce developer who joins Sylius has like a hybrid language of the business and the developers who work on the project. So he's able to understand pretty easily what the features are without diving into the business aspects or diving into very technical aspects of how this works. Because we are often passionate about the software, but we should be more passionate about the value we deliver. So here's an example of taxes applied to the card feature. From today's perspective and my understanding of BDD, I would change a few things here, but it's the whole suite of our scenarios is evolving, so we are changing it a lot and improving the context on the features itself. For example, recently I realized that we should probably remove some of the scenarios which cover like every validation scenario for a form. It doesn't make much sense to cover every edge case. So, what is the workflow with Sylius with such features? Most of the time it starts with an idea for a new feature. There's a problem with existing feature, or there's something missing. So the people come and say, hey, we started a Sylius project, there's this very important feature missing. How can we implement it? It was the case, for example, with address book. So the first thing we do is start an LFC about adding it to core. So we discuss if it makes sense that it is part of the Sylius and not maybe external bundle. We generally discuss if it's worth the effort to implement it. That's the perfect workflow. Of course, it not always looks like this, but that's the perfect workflow we try to follow. We show it through examples using Behat. So we write the scenarios before any code. Then we go into the design phase with PHP Spec. And hopefully, finally, I can click the merge button because the rest couldn't agree. So yes, this is a good example of recently, it's not merged yet, but I implemented this feature by the request of the community. So there was a problem with our promotion system, which I will explain in a second, that people wanted to define a bit more complex rules because the current system is pretty powerful, but it lacks the support for some conditions like or well, it's doable, but you have to put some more effort in this than expected. So there was an article by Jonathan Wage from the Doctrine project who described the way how they handle them, how they handle promotions with the expression language from Symfony. So I decided, hey, that's a cool feature. I have no idea how I will implement it in Sylius, but let's write it. So let me give you a very quick overview of the promotion system. So every promotion defined in Sylius consists of a set of actions and rules. The basic idea is that if all rules are satisfied, all the actions are executed. Of course, there are many other factors like dates, coupons, etc. But the basic idea is this. So with the expression language, you could come up with pretty a lot of different promotions. But the basic idea was, maybe it's not a very common use case, but I assume that we want to apply a promotion to all the users having an email in a specific domain. So this is how the scenario looks. It could be improved, maybe a bit simplified, but it describes how this feature should work. So there is an OpenSky promotion, which has one rule, which type is expression, and there's an expression which matches the user email against a pattern. It has also a simple action which adds a discount, a fixed discount, fixed amount of discount. So the next step was writing a simple spec, because Sylius uses a special services which implement a rule checker interface. So basically this service is responsible for checking if the rule with the given configuration from the rule object on the action is if the requirement is satisfied for this particular order. It was a matter of 3 examples, and this turned green. So that's a really nice feeling where you start from nothing. You just have a feature request. There's a guy who wants more flexibility, and you don't know how to do it. I haven't thought about it before. So you just start with a feature, expecting something. You implement it, and truth green, and everyone is happy. When I married, because it's okay. So what I noticed with Sylius and Behat is that it drastically improves. It makes it easier to collaborate, like between different people from completely. They are not in the same office. The guys I will show you an example were from the same country, but not the same office. So BDD with Behat makes it a lot easier to collaborate, because you have unified language for communication. The functionality is much easier to understand when someone picks up a pull request after you. So you start a pull request. In this case, it was address. So Winzu, which is one of the core team members, like Sander Bacco, he started an address book feature so that the customer who has an account in the store can manage his preferred shipping and billing addresses. So he wrote the features, he started some basic implementation, but he had to leave somewhere, and the address book was basically waiting. We wanted it fast because it's a pretty basic feature for e-commerce. And the only option was that someone picks up the work after him. And it was like another member of the core team read the features, read the RFC topic. It was really, really easy to implement. Thanks to the use of Behat scenarios, which we skipped the whole phase of passing the requirements and passing the idea to a different person because someone left the project. So the Behat features were enough for him to understand what he started and what needs to be done. So I focused on Behat in this presentation because it's Behat Meetup, but there is one cool feature. Maybe it is probably a feature, but it looks a bit like a side effect. Not everyone notices it. Is that when you write specs for your code, for example, if anyone from you tried Sylius documentation, it's very far from perfect. But if you want to know what a particular class does, you just execute the specs and you have a human readable of a description of what this particular promotion processor does. So actually it's using the old way of writing examples with the should. Right now we try to go with the present tense of what the object is supposed to do. So it should be a Sylius promotion processor. So this should be probably more precise, like it implements Sylius promotion processor interface. But it should not apply promotions which are not eligible for the order, and should apply only the valid orders. So by reading the specification output, you get the idea of what this object is supposed to do without even looking at the code. Yes, and the same thing is with Behat scenarios. So we miss a lot in terms of documentation, but it's very easy to point a person having a question to a particular, to appropriate Behat scenario, so that he gets a better understanding of how this feature works. Let's say there was a guy who was asking a very generic question: how taxes work in Sylius, or how I can apply different taxes. And he was a new community member, so he has the simplest question: how taxes work in Sylius? Can I apply taxes included in the price? And one of the guys, it was a bit rude, but he answered, just go and check the features folder. What are you waiting for? Right. So when you go, I couldn't fit the whole feature file, but this gives you some idea of how you can understand how taxes work. For example, we have a concept of default tax law. So if an user is not logged in and we don't know where he comes from, which is the appropriate tax for him to apply, we define the default tax zone. So we have a scenario with an unknown billing address and a default tax zone for UK, which shows you how the taxes are applied. Here, and a bit lower, there's a scenario which shows you how the taxes are applied after the customer passed the shipping step, because he already gave us his address, so we know what taxes to apply. Another question was how Sylius picks which shipping methods are available for the customer when he checks out, because when I check out with EU address, I get some DHL, and when I check out with US, there is only FedEx. How it works, how I can change it. The solution is the same, just look at the correct feature file. So, if I fill the shipping address to USA, then I should not see the European option, but I should see the FedEx, or I should select the FedEx option. And again, I couldn't fit the background, but in the background you see the whole configuration which had to be set up to support this. Like there were 2 shipping zones for the UK and for the US, and 2 shipping methods, and each of them had the correct zone attached. So, a few words about Behat version 3, because we adopted it recently. It's for sure a lot faster. Yeah, it's definitely faster, and I know that because with Behat version 2, our whole feature suite and specs took over 50 minutes on Travis. So, for like
50 or 50?
50 minutes. Yes, like 400 scenarios and almost 2,000 specs, or a little less. So it was taking a bit long on Travis. Probably it runs much faster on local machine, but it's a bit slow, and Travis has a limit of 50 minutes. So it wasn't even failure, it was just error. And when we upgraded to Behat 3, automatically our scrutinizer rating for the code quality jumped by like 20 points, because we split the big context into several smaller ones. And faster, and Travis started to be green, which was good to see after like 2 weeks of seeing all. So it's probably few percent or even more faster. Suites are awesome. We went with the initial approach. It's still unclear what's the best and recommended way, but we went with a different suite for a different aspect of e-commerce. So there is a shipping suite which uses a shipping context and all the other appropriate contexts, and there is a taxation suite, and every separate group of features which kind of relate to each other have its own suite. And the idea is we run them in parallel, which should be much faster, but we still wait.
You don't need to wait, you just need to contribute.
You know, I'm a bit busy with this thing. No, really, I would love to. But yeah, we can wait. I think it will be worth the wait, because it's already possible, just a bit hard to do. We are still a bit confused about how to structure the context, because as I said, we have a taxonomy context and shipping context. When you look through other presentations, there are some examples of little brother, big brother, so kind of more role specific context, and that's something I would love to implement, like have a store owner context, or store manager context, customer context, visitor context, and something like that. The issue is we need probably page objects support for that. And I'm looking at you, my friend. We need page objects in P1.0, because otherwise we will end up with very fat context. So, Kuba.
More questions waiting. It's such
I mentioned you in the presentation. Like, can't wait for Kuba page objects. Yeah. Now maybe it's not a rant. It's just an observation. some of the contributors who come to Sylius are a bit scared, because obviously adoption of PHP unit and adoption of I don't care about tests is very big, so there are very different people coming to the community. Some of them are like, tests? Oh, it's a waste of time, let's just build this Magento 3 on top of Sylius or whatever. So there are people who don't care about testing or don't understand the value of writing or doing BD. The other group is PHP unit fans, which is a great tool, but we have some better tools. Yeah. And some of them are a bit not so eager to change, or they are a bit lazy like every good developer, so they don't want to learn PHP Spec because they are fine with the PHP unit mocking, which takes like forever. I hope Sebastian Bergman is not here. Sorry. No, it's a great tool, I understand. So, yes, and they kind of feel like they feel the pressure because we set a bit high standards and high requirements for the quality and for the workflow. Most of the time we want the features for every pull request. We want the specs. In worst case, they add them afterwards, which is not the perfect workflow, but still better than nothing. So yes, but the good side is that they have some of the newcomers which are very interested in the project. They want to try, they want to participate. They have just more than the pull documentation, so they have the features and the specs to learn from. So in some cases, people not familiar with e-commerce or not familiar with Symfony at all, they pick up really fast and they join. They're fully valuable members of the community. Yeah, and probably you guys and many other people get a bit more satisfaction from this, but I think that adopting Sylius taught few developers PHP Spec and Behat. And that includes me, of course, but I've seen how people who worked on Sylius before started using PHP Spec, and they just became much better developers. Some of the contributions are really outstanding. I never expected that someone will do so much work for me, like implement whole features the way I would implement them, or even better. And the careers grow. That's also a great thing. When they get better jobs, simply because they write better code and deliver more value. So, the summary, I'm not sure if it's long or not. The question should be, does BDD work for open source? I think yes, and in some aspects of the communication, like it's hard to compare it, how effective it is with a commercial project. But with open source project, I see a big difference between the stage before Behat and after Behat. Like the communication is a different world. Like it's really. And I noticed that previously the decision making about what goes to the core, what goes to the external panel, or what is interesting for students at all, was like, oh, I'm sitting here doing open source, and yeah, maybe this will be cool. Let's put it in. Let's merge this, or let's not merge it. With Behat, we have a whole standard process where we know what is the benefit of the feature, how it works. With examples, it's much easier for me to decide if it fits the core of it, or if it should really go to some external panel. The collaboration, which is the key when you have the Sylius core team is 7 people, including me, with one inactive guy, I think. And they're from Hong Kong, from France. One is French and living in Singapore. The other one is San Diego. And one is from Ukraine. So it makes it a lot easier for us to collaborate when we have this standard language. We don't really have any meetings like weekly chats. What to do with Sylius? We just work through BDD. The little downside, I don't think this is a downside in the long run, because there's a constant need of innovation. we could stay with the simplest form of the PHP and have probably a bit bigger community because more developers could participate. Because it would be easier to write some code which fits Sylius code base. So we raise a bit the entry barrier for the contributors. So those who are not familiar with BDD and PHP Spec have a little harder work to do in order to catch up. But in the long run, it dramatically increases the quality of code. So, thank you. That would be it. Do you have any questions? Yeah?
You mentioned that some of the people using Sylius, they had clients that had come to them with requirements, and then they defined that feature, and then it got into the core project. Can you give an example?
Yeah, well, you have with a lot of people working on Sylius, like different people from different projects. We need to find a common language for us, and it's very different from what a particular developer uses to communicate with his client. So, for example, there is a project because it's still a work in progress, but that's kind of a good example where the client wanted to apply some very custom promotion to a specific item, and it was not possible with different architecture. So he came from the project, from the commercial project. He couldn't write it with the business language because it was specific to the domain of the client. So it was saying, it was I think clothing or books, I don't remember right now. But it was something very specific to the business. And if you put this feature in the Sylius, everybody was like, what is it doing here? We sell everything, we don't only sell books. So what he did is just took this requirement, used our dictionary, our domain language to implement the same feature with the same benefit, and there's a pull request waiting. Well, we have merged it and I'm back from London, but that's the example of how features and ideas flow from commercial projects. And it's the more projects there are around Sylius, the better it is, of course.
So do you have contributors who are like dedicated to help feature requesters to write feature files?
Yeah, and it's me most of the time. Yeah, everyone is busy, but most of the time, probably I have like several emails to answer. Maybe it's some of them are from you, so sorry. But yeah, there are people coming most of the time to me, and I try to explain them very quickly because it's a whole easy stuff to explain. But I try to write the features with them, or just take their ideas and write them myself. But it's great for feature requesting. Like the guy doesn't know Sylius at all; he just wants this to work.
So you're going to have limited example workshops. One by one, you have limited example workshops.
Yeah. I wish I could hire someone to answer everything, but it doesn't work like that. Yes, please.
To be able to deploy scenarios, you need to keep a system up to date. Do you have some...
Sorry?
To be able to play scenarios, to settle scenario, you need to keep like a system up to date, database or something. What are you using to bring it into known context to be able to apply it, to be able to play it?
What do you use for fixtures or migrations?
Yeah, fixtures, yeah.
Well, I think that's the right way of doing it. All the fixtures live in a feature. They can't be hidden behind some... I know that people use, and I think I did it myself once, use document fixtures to load the data to database before running Behat scenarios. But that's definitely not the way to do it, because you lose all the context and all the preconditions for the scenarios. It has to be all written in the feature.
Well,
it can be hidden behind a step, for example, but it should be known for the reader of the feature what is going on, because if you just load some fixtures from document fixtures and then run a scenario of products, you don't really know where these products come from.
Was the question more about infrastructure? How do you technically do
Yeah,
database isolation
on,
stuff?
on which step you apply the feature learning.
Okay. So I can answer this because basically
Okay.
Sylius is, sorry for that. Sylius is based on top of Symfony. So with Symfony it's fairly easy because if you use like 4am like Doctrine or Propel, first thing that they do is they clean the database after each scenario. It's fairly cheap to do and it's fairly fast to do so. Before each scenario they actually have the clear database state. And then what they do is they have the background steps, how Paweł described it, just like they say, like given there is a product, or there is a promotion exists, or there is a promotion expression, and they actually use the code from the Sylius to put the promotions into the database. They create an object, they persist it to the database in the given steps. So they actually use Sylius to create records in the database, and then after each scenario they clear everything out.
Yes, sorry, I just assumed that everyone uses Symfony. No, yeah, that's
Does it answer?
perfect.
Yeah.
That's the short answer.
Okay?
Can I grab a beer?
Yeah, let's drink.